When it comes to sunrises in the Flint Hills of Kansas, no filter is necessary. Cattle have grazed these grasslands for over a century.
You know, I just love this.
And Debbie LYONS-BLYTHE, a cattle rancher of a certified Angus herd, wants to keep it that way.
When you talk about cattle ranching and the importance of what we do, it's really about being an environmentalist.
She says the cattle industry can be a solution to the climate crisis.
Here on our ranch, there's a number of things that we do, and the first thing is to maintain the prairie.
Prairie land like hers actually helps remove greenhouse gases from the air and stores them in the ground. Their roots act like a giant storage unit. This isn't fertile land for crops, but cows make it useful by grazing on it.
Grasslands are vitally important because we don't plow them, we don't till them under, we don't release their carbon. So they're sequestering carbon all the time.
Housing developments have devoured grasslands across the U.S. LYONS-BLYTHE says her cows are helping protect this patch of the prairie. In another part of Kansas, cattle rancher BRANDI BUZZARD has had to work hard to regrow her ranch's grass.
I mean, just look at it. Like that's up to my hips on some of those. That makes me so happy to see that, because that's healthy grass. If you want a picture of healthy grass, that's healthy.
So far, it's taken 6 years.
So on our ranch, we're big advocates of rotational grazing, which means that the cattle don't stay on a pasture for, like 2 or 3 months at a time. See, from the soil to like the height of the grass is my hand. So that's maybe 4 or 5 inches. And we'll move them before the whole pasture will not look like this before we move them. We won't even let it get like that.
This allows cows to essentially harvest the grass without destroying its root system. LYONS-BLYTHE uses a similar method.
Watch your step, because this is where the cows congregate, and of course, there's quite a bit of manure around here, right?
Right.
Plus, her ground is fertilized the natural way. Her cows drink water from solar-powered pumps, and cropland used to supplement the cow's diet is always growing something to keep carbon in the ground. This season, it's alfalfa. After a cow grazes on grasslands, they typically will come to a feed yard. This is usually an image that we are used to seeing, but there tends not to be a lot of information about how they really operate.
We provide a service for America's farmers and ranchers, primarily family-owned operations. They send us their cattle for the final stage in the beef supply chain, and we'll have these cattle for 120 to 150 days prior to them going to harvest and ending up on dinner plates all over North America, Europe, and even parts of Asia.
They grow most of their feed. Once harvested, they'll plant cover crops to keep carbon in the ground. They run a no-till operation and allow cattle to graze on the lands they stored.
As far as sustainability goes, I frankly prefer the word regenerative. I don't want this operation, when I hand it off to my children someday, to be something that I just sustained. I want it to be better.
Oh, that was a big one. I'm glad its roots are not like that long.
Both ranches and feed yards use genetics and nutrition to reduce methane emissions.
It smells really good right now.
Scientists are even looking into feeding cows some seaweed, which may help reduce emissions. John BUTLER owns 16 feed yards and is the former chair of the U.S. Roundtable for Sustainable Beef.
We need to benchmark what kind of impact we're having. And that's the stage we're sort of in right now. We set goals of reducing and being more efficient, but we've got to really understand where we are today.
It's an effort the entire industry has to buy into.
We have got to make sure that every sector in the value chain is using resources appropriately, is taking care of their employees and their communities, and frankly, making a profit.
It seems to be a rallying cry.
Well, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity to advance everything in agriculture, whether that be our soil health or our climate impact and all these things. And the people that I know in agriculture are passionate about that. I know I am.
Passion to protect not only these prairies and the cows who depend on them, but the climate as well. These ranchers are confident in their ability to meet that 2040 climate neutrality goal. In fact, Debbie LYONS-BLYTHE, who played a role in establishing the National Cattlemen's Beef Association climate goal, told me the group set goals they can absolutely prove. The challenge will be expanding through the entire beef supply chain because as it stands, it's a pretty decentralized industry. Chance?
Thank you, Lauren. So if grazing cattle has so much potential when it comes to sustainability, why do you always hear so much about all the threats with cattle? Let's bring in Frank MITLOEHNER tonight. He's a professor and air quality extension specialist at UC Davis. Professor, good to have you here. So you have about 2 decades of researching this topic, is my understanding, livestock, air quality. The cow burps, the cow toots we hear about hurting the planet. Is it really that bad?
Well, it is, on the one side, the belching, on the other side, the manure that the animal produces, and both release methane gas. And the methane gas is a potent greenhouse gas, yes.
Okay, and so the burps or the other end, which is worse?
The other end plays no role in this, okay? This is this is an urban myth, but the reality is what comes out the front end is really a gas that's generated in the stomach of those animals, in the so-called rumen. And so that methane gas that's produced in the rumen is a gas that's produced during digestion, and it's belched out. And that belching is referred to as enteric emissions, okay? I mean, enteric emissions, front-end emissions of those animals that are the main source of greenhouse gases from the entire agricultural sector.
In Lauren's piece, she's talking about American cattle ranchers using science to try to track their methane emissions. How accurate is that science?
It is very accurate. You can put animals into so-called head chambers where literally the animal's head is in a see-through chamber, and you can measure the gases that are exhaled or belched by those animals, and you can do it very precisely. And some of your viewers and listeners will be amused by that, but you know, if your industry is believed to be one of the main sources of greenhouse gases contributing to climate change, then you're starting to take that seriously, you know.
Give us a look at the future, Professor. Can the U.S. cattle industry, let's say, be climate neutral by 2040? What would that take?
So what's really exciting here is this. For example, the animal manure, once it's stored in so-called lagoons, that's what they're called, that manure produces gases, and a lot of that is methane. And these manure facilities can be capped. You can put a top over it and capture the gases that are produced underneath and convert them, it's called biogas, by the way, and convert this biogas into a fuel type for vehicles. So you can take that manure gas and convert it into vehicle fuel called renewable natural gas. And this vehicle fuel can then be used to fuel semi-trucks. Believe it or not, the California dairy industry over the last few years has reduced its methane footprint by 25%. And here's what's exciting about this. If you reduce methane, then you are taking carbon out of the air, and that has an immediate cooling effect. So reducing methane is one of the most important tools for our society to have a short-term impact on our climate. And so animal agriculture can be an important part of that.
Take us even one step further, if you would. You published a white paper in 2020, I believe, arguing that cattle could potentially help cool the climate down the road. I know some researchers at Johns Hopkins said, no, you got it wrong. You were too generous making your assumptions with agriculture. You focused just on the U.S. What is the bottom line on that they could potentially help cool the climate?
So I wouldn't say that they cool the planet or cool the climate. So what I would say is that when you reduce methane, then you have an immediate impact on climate. Okay, a reduction of methane, let's say through feeding feed additives that reduce this belching issue, or through covering the lagoons to reduce the manure-based methane. A reduction of that methane has an immediate impact on our climate. And with respect to your mentioning of this Johns Hopkins criticism, in my opinion, we need to figure out what we do with livestock here in the United States. Other countries have to do that as well. But by discussing this issue globally, we are not really making headways because while, yes, these issues are issues everywhere in the world, we have to figure out how to address those here in our country first. And then we can help others doing the same.
Professor Frank MITLOEHNER with UC Davis, thank you so much. It's good to have people like you living and working 10, 20, 30 years in the future. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Take care. Thanks for having me.